Okay, I am live again. I am live. Now, before I get into the work too much, I'm gonna, because I scheduled the stream for 5 minutes from now, so I'm a little early. If you guys can live with that, I'm going to take a few moments and I'm just gonna review. I'm just gonna look at some of my show and kind of think about different things that I might want to tweak or improve. It's really remarkable, I must say, when I think about the idea of, I wish I would have known 6 months ago what I know now. It's really amazing how the ongoing process of learning and growing and trying different things as you refine your process and kind of figure out what you're doing. It's always a bummer to look back at the stuff that you wish you'd have done better. So I'm kind of looking at that a bit today. I already streamed a little bit earlier today, and once we hit 6 o'clock, so 3 minutes from now, I'm gonna show you guys a link to a animation one of my subscribers did that looks really good. He did a great job on it. But again, I'll wait until 6 o'clock. So between now and 6 o'clock, I'm just going to kind of look at some of the older, some of the footage, that was created some time ago, and kind of think about what I did well, what I did poorly, and what might be improved. I can always go back and tweak things. I will say that, I'll say now, even though it's technically not 6 o'clock, if I had the whole thing to do over again, I don't think I would have gone down the side roads with Krita and Blender. Krita especially. Krita's been wonderful. It's really a great program. I use it all the time. But certainly recently, every day that goes by, I'm more firmly ensconced, I should say, in doing the work almost completely in Tahoma2D or OpenToonz. But, like right there's a shot that was done in Krita, and it definitely looks pretty good, pretty fun. You can do it, obviously. But, it just recently I've found everything I like about Krita, I've basically found I can do just as effectively in OpenToonz, and the overall workflow is a little more manageable more reusable. Yeah, it's just a great program. So, who's out there today? Right now, we haven't really officially started. We got 1 minute to go, but I have 3 concurrent viewers. So, who the heck are you? Who's out there? Ajax, are you watching? Because I was going to talk a little bit about your cartoon that you posted. Inio-san, hey brother. How you doing, man? I'm just going through here and kind of thinking about what's working, what's not working, what could be improved, yada, yada, yada. I've only got about 6 minutes to go to have episode 2 animated. But I'm giving myself a little time. So some of you may have been annoyed by the fact that over the last couple days I've talked a little bit about trading in the markets, which, has nothing to do with animation. But it's something that's interesting to me, and I've in fact, when it comes to wishing I'd known 6 months ago what I know now, oh boy, do I ever. I really wish I would have known. Not even 6 months ago. That's not true. a year ago, because the big tank was in March of 2020 actually. So there was a huge opportunity there that I kind of missed. So because he had asked me to take a look at this video. So Ajax, AJEX. But this is a tremendous amount of work that he did. And I'll just kind of skip through a little bit, and you just kind of look at some of the work that Ajax did on this animation, and it's pretty respectable. I really have to say it's some good stuff. It's kind of like a sort of a music video kind of little episode thing, just under 5 minutes long. So shout out to Ajax. Well done, my friend. Well done. Keep it up. And for those of you that are looking for other people out there that are maybe trying to do some cool animation stuff, Ajax is doing it. So kudos to Ajax for getting in there and doing it. Now, as far as the show goes, I actually took the most recent, let me see here. Yeah, the sequence I've been working on. And I've really tightened up the editing, actually, so that we're kind of coming into a sequence here where things really need to start flying. Okay. So with that in mind, what I did was just tightened up the edit points on a couple of the recent shots, kind of starting from here going forward, so that everything's just really flying. I've sped that shot up, so go, 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 go. That's what we need. This sequence, we're getting into kind of the fun part of episode 2, certainly, and so we need to get things moving. So now when I jump over to Vegas here, let me switch this to good auto and turn the preview thingy dingy off. Let me see here. According to the edit as it exists at the moment, we're at 23 minutes and 45 seconds. We've got about 6 minutes left to animate. But you think about it, this is a 24-minute episode. There's going to be an intro segment and there's going to be an outro segment. So that means that I have room to chop. Let me see here. At least a full minute. I have room to chop at least a full minute out of this show. And that's assuming that this storyboard sequence, through here does not actually come out a little longer than what's there in the storyboard. So I'm feeling pretty good about, having the timing all come out right. So right now what I'm doing is we've got this shot where, okay, so TNR is getting ready to duck out, right? So she's coming out of here, and then we've got Mel's reaction. So what I wanted to do is kind of rethink this shot. I took the storyboard and started just doing the ink and paint, right? Started inking it, and not really happy with it. I'm feeling constrained by the storyboard. This next sequence is really, he runs up the mountain, skips over the top. So I'm just kind of feeling like this shot is lacking a bit. So what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to go ahead and turn this into the old raster brush. Or I should say a my paintbrush. It's not a raster level. It's a standard smart raster level, or Toonz raster level is what OpenToonz calls it. But what I want to do is just have a little fun playing with the timing here and what's going to happen. So what I'm going to do is I just want to block in the character, and I'm deliberately making him a little bit larger than than the frame would maybe suggest. Okay. And now what I'm going to do, I'll go ahead and turn on the onion skins, which I don't usually do, but I want to just make that a little smaller. Okay, so that's going to be, let's just kind of stretch this out to 1 second. Well, I shouldn't say 1 second. It's really 3 seconds because I'm operating at 8 frames per second. So what I'm trying to get here, and I'm just going to go ahead and take this one out, Control X. We can always come back to it. It's here in the level strip, obviously, so it's not really gone. So we'll just turn this off. And so what I'm thinking is I'm going to let this breathe for half a second. Excuse me, my nose itches. Okay, boom. Yeah, that's perfect, actually. That's exactly what I wanted. Okay, cool. So now I'm just going to try to get the broad expressions in here. And I guess I can take the onion skins out now that I've got the motion kind of blocked in. There's no reason for the onion skins to be there. They just distract me. So I'm kind of treating as kind of the eye line, if you will, as sort of almost like a mask. I'm just kind of drawing the overall shape of that the eyes are sitting inside of, just so I kind of do it accurately. So that's what this shape is. It's just pretty much a guide, actually. And now I want to just keep it loose. I know I'm starting to make faces. We animators always make faces when we're animating. And this is all going by one, each, drawing is only on the screen for 1 frame, so I got a lot of room to just keep it loose and okay, so I'm just trying to get his reaction to, because remember what's going on here is he's outside of this tent and he's seeing her start to pop out, and it's like, get me out of here, because he's really not supposed to be there in that location. So whoever's watching, you have not identified yourself. Identify yourself. Identify yourself. Identify yourself. So yeah, like I said, I hope nobody's too bummed at me for talking about things like the price action on Bitcoin and stuff like that, because I really find it quite interesting. Okay, so now what I need to do is zip in here. I'm going to just go ahead and take my eraser, just do some lasso erasing and get rid of the noise, so I can something like that would be good. And nobody's identifying themselves. You bad boys and girls. Somebody's watching me. Somebody's watching, but they're not identifying themselves. That's just evil. That's just wrong. That's just wrong. So today is the day before Memorial Day, which is I think it's a uniquely American holiday. I probably should know that, but I I think it is. It's a USA thing.
Well, I think some in Europe, if it's Memorial Day for World War II and the like, then probably Europe as well.
Okay. So if anybody is watching from Europe, do you guys observe Memorial Day as we do in the United States? So so that means that the markets are closed on Monday,
Yeah.
which means we can kind of get a breather from looking at price action. Although Bitcoin is 24/7, it never ends. But I would actually really enjoy showing some of the stuff I've learned, because it's really amazing how it's like I mentioned this morning, it's like learning a language. So when you hear, the example I gave is if you hear somebody speaking in Russian or Japanese or whatever the language is that you don't know, um, you do hear it, but it's gibberish to you. It doesn't mean anything. And once you learn the language, all of a sudden it becomes meaningful. And reading the market, price action on the market is the same way. Once you understand it, all of a sudden you start to see a lot of things that you just didn't see before. It's like right there in front of you. And it's really kind of amazing how you can see patterns develop. You can see them emerging, and you can tell that they're coming, right? You can. It isn't that you can predict the future, because no one can do that. But it's kind of like predicting the future, because what happens in a small time frame, it's kind of like animation, actually, in the sense that with animation, what we're doing is we're creating really small moves, or changes from these drawings, and we only feel the story of it when we see it move, when we play it back quickly. So each drawing is a snapshot, and you don't really understand the story of it until you see it move, right? Price action in the market is the same way. When you see it move in one time frame, and then you see what that looks like in a wider time frame, all of a sudden you can see what's going to happen, what's going to unfold in that larger time frame. So it's really quite an amazing thing to begin to understand, right? But it's just one of many things that I happen to find quite interesting. And as my concurrent viewers drops to 3. Okay, yeah, I get it, people. Yeah, you don't want to hear about that. Okay, I get it. No, I'm going to talk about whatever I want to talk about, because it's my channel and I get to talk about whatever I want. I've successfully resisted the urge for the last year to get into too much about the socio-political landscape, because I have some pretty strong opinions about some of the things that have happened here in the USA in the last year, really, but especially through the whole election cycle and all that stuff. It's just quite a lot to have opinions about. And I have dear friends and associates who have very different opinions than mine, and that's part of the fun to me. I think it's cool to be able to explore all kinds of ideas. I have no fear or concern about a different opinion. I may challenge you to defend that opinion, and explain why you feel that way, but it's all good. It's none of it's a reason that we should be hating on each other. It's all just information that we can, either choose to act on or ignore, I suppose, in most cases. So, yeah, why not? You can talk about Bitcoin, UFO, UFOs, right? I did. Well, the UFO disclosure thing, that's a thing right now, right? And some people, the conspiracy aspect of it that some people are worried about. I know Dr. Stephen Greer is certainly worried about this. Is that so let's talk about UFOs, since we're just sitting here drawing anyway. So the contention is that not that UFOs are not a thing, because the idea would be that UFOs are definitely a thing, and they've been around for a long time, and there is almost no evidence, there probably is no evidence that if there are aliens out there, that they're malevolent, we don't have anything to be afraid of because of aliens, right? So that would be your basic starting point, let's say. So the idea is that, yeah, of course there are UFOs, of course there are aliens, and they're just kind of watching us, and they don't really get involved, they don't really do too much. Okay, that's a starting point. Well, it's not quite that simple, because there are those who contend very strongly that there have been episodes in the last 50 years or whatever where we have come perilously close, especially through the Cold War period. Hey, Maria. Where we have come perilously close to actually getting into a nuclear war. You know, events that we didn't necessarily hear about. And there are those who believe that when we've gotten perilously close, that there have been episodes that have occurred where mysteriously all of the control systems for nuclear, installations and whatnot have gone dark. Like, they just didn't work, right? Some people believe that that's when the aliens intervene. They basically aren't going to let us destroy ourselves, is kind of the gist of that. Now, I don't know if I necessarily buy that, but there are people who think that. But as far as the current controversy, what you got is you do have this disclosure happening. So we don't have our government saying that UFOs are aliens. Nobody's saying that, although it's implied that it could be a possibility. What they are saying is that these videos that have emerged that show flight technology that is orders of magnitude beyond anything that we are aware of or know how to do. You know, things that are flying 1,000 miles an hour and make a immediate hairpin 90-degree turn without, being damaged. Things like that. And Barack Obama even came out recently and conceded, yeah, I mean, it's true. There's stuff out there, videos that people have gotten of technology that we don't really understand how it works. So now, then the obvious question is, well, is it a foreign country, or is it aliens, or what is it? That's the question. So Dr. Stephen Greer, who you can find on YouTube, his concern is this. His contention is that through the last at least 50 years, longer than that, really, probably since, I'm having a brain fart, the thing that happened in the 1940s. Valerie, what was it? How can I forget this? It's like right in the tip of my, this is what happens when you get old. You have these brain farts where it's right there, but you can't get the word. The Roswell, thank you. She didn't even say it. I just needed to put my brain in a different place, and then all of a sudden I remember so basically since Roswell, since at least the 40s. Okay, so the idea is this. Dr. Stephen Greer would say, well, look, the reality is that the aliens came, they crashed, we got the technology and have been able to deconstruct some of it or reverse engineer some of it. Not all of it, but some of it. So his contention would be that, so for many years there have been the black ops projects, government military industrial complex projects, developing technologies and weapons and things like that are way beyond what we in the normal public are allowed to be aware of. So why is that a problem? Well, his contention would be that what he's afraid of is that the recent disclosure, which, if you don't know this has happened. Yeah, it's a sign of genius. Yeah, thank you, Maria. We're going to assume that's the case. It could be, I guess. So the concern is this, that if we have these technologies, and in point of fact, some but not all of the UFO sightings that have happened over the years are not in fact aliens, although some of them are. So the idea is that, yeah, there's aliens, duh. They show up around us, once in a while. They sort of check out what we're up to, and they don't really get involved. But they're keeping an eye on us, let's say. So Dr. Stephen Greer would say, yeah, but most of the events that people see in the sky are not that. Most of the events people see in the sky that are attributed to aliens are actually our own technology. Okay? And in fact, to a degree, some of the information that's out there in sort of the UFO community is actually disinformation placed by government operatives in order to create confusion and FUD, fear, uncertainty, and what's the D? Probably distrust or something about the topic, in order to discredit the people that are into UFOs and basically make them look stupid. And the idea is that we want to discredit them so that no one takes it seriously enough to investigate it deeply. Well, we've just crossed a bridge this year, well, really, and into last year, where, you know, video footage has surfaced that is pretty hard to explain away, and for the first time like ever, we're actually seeing the government concede, yeah, actually, okay, that footage is genuine. We don't know what that is, and, you know, it seems to be something we need to figure out. So now back to the conspiracy theory. The conspiracy theory that Dr. Stephen Greer has is this: the military-industrial complex sometime soon is going to stage a false flag event. That means that there's going to be an attack, and the attack is going to actually be done by ourselves in order to create a situation that can then be blamed on aliens. And that is a pathway to greater and greater funding for the military-industrial complex to develop weaponry, to weaponize outer space, yada, yada, yada. And they're concerned about that because actually there was an accord. This is literally true. This isn't something I'm making up or I just believe it. This is actually a fact, is that there was an accord in place between the Soviet Union, well, not the Soviet Union, obviously, Russia, I'm sorry. I grew up in the 70s. Russia. Between us, Russia, China, basically an agreement not to weaponize space, and that Joe Biden recently decided to kind of backpedal on making that commitment. So for some people that's concerning because, and they're trying to make it like, do kind of like this open source documentary thing where they call people's wrong evidence about that in regard to the Gulf of Tonkin incident before Vietnam. There's some evidence, I don't know if it's as strong, regarding Pearl Harbor. There's certainly evidence regarding 9/11 that would suggest that maybe it was a false flag event. So I'm not necessarily one of those people who believes that it was a false flag event, but there are a lot of problems. I mean, when you look into it, there's a lot of questions that do need to be answered about those events. Okay, so we got a little problem here. Basically, his eyes are too small, so I'm just gonna do this the simplest possible way. Yeah, there we go. That's feeling better. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of fun actually. We're in one of the most interesting. Well, I would say probably the most interesting time in my life. I would have said the period around 9/11 was like the weirdest time I ever lived through. But I think we've gone past that. What we've seen sociopolitically with the election, actually, okay, I'm gonna just throw this out there, guys. Do you want me to go down this road? Do you want me to talk about what I actually think about the election and how it informs the way we think about what we think we know? Our beliefs, our religion. There's all kinds of things about what we believe that I think what happened in the last 6 months in the United States really ought to make us think twice about what we think we know or what we believe. So if you want me to go down that road, give me a shout out here. Say something. Say, yeah, Dave, it's cool. Or, no, Dave, just draw your stupid cartoon and keep these things to yourself. So Inio-san said talk about whatever, but I guess I just don't want to piss people off by going so far off topic that they're like freaking out about it, right? I love you guys. I just love you guys, and I don't want you to be, don't want you to be too mad at me. A little mad at me is okay. This is cool. I like this. I like this so much better than what I had before. Now, there is one thing kind of sort of missing, which he really needs an eye blink there. Gosh, let's just put a D in there. And what we'll do is we'll go Control X so we can then stretch this down. And then this is going to be probably probably just erase this. And then let's take these two guys and squunch them down a little bit. I'm always interested in ideas. So, hey, Hal9000, I haven't seen you here before, so thank you. Okay, so here's what I think. And I'm going to try to stick to that which we can actually know for sure instead of speculation or accusation or any of that. Okay, this is what I think we know for sure. Surrounding the election in the United States, there is a significant percentage of the American population who believes one thing that is utterly the opposite of what the entire other half of the population believes. Now, you can get into why that's happened or whether you want to criticize it. I personally would criticize it. I think that disinformation is a problem, but I also think it's probably a problem on both sides of the political spectrum. And it would be my opinion that some of the more right-leaning information sources have gone off the rails more than on the left, but there's criticisms to be leveled against the left. But the takeaway that's interesting is this. We've got half the people that believe things happened for which, as objective as we can be, the evidence that those things happened has not emerged. They haven't been able to find the evidence of it. And the anecdotal evidence or reports of things that have gone wrong, and this is obviously in regard to election fraud, those reports continue. I mean, people that were leaning in that direction still feel very strongly that they have this concern. Now, from my perspective, my opinion is that when you have Donald Trump saying this is going to happen, and you think about it, the story he told about that there's going to be election fraud, not that there was, but that there's going to be, because he was talking about it a month ahead of time. That story served his purpose. Okay, so now that doesn't mean that he's necessarily a liar, but what is for sure true is that the story definitely benefited his goals. Okay? Now, when somebody tells an outrageous story, maybe it's not outrageous. However, if that story absolutely, provably, without a doubt, is consistent with the outcome that the person telling the story would want you to believe, then it's only sensible to suspect the story. You should go, well, wait a minute. If he's telling the story because he's laying the groundwork so that if the election doesn't go his way, he can say, look, see what I told you was going to happen. Well, then the most sensible view is that that story was told so that when the election didn't go his way, he could always fall back on the story. And indeed, that's exactly what we saw happen. To be clear here, guys, that does not mean the story isn't true. I don't personally think the story's true, but we can't say definitively. Okay, so here's the deal. I've got a Trumper friend on Facebook who through that whole period of time from November through the January 6th event, he would post things on Facebook that were coming from a decidedly Trumper vantage point. And in every case, I would look at the data and I would say, well, Mark, actually, this is what I think's going to happen. What you're going to find is that all sounds very compelling, but I don't see the evidence, and if the evidence comes out, then we'll deal with it. But basically, Mark, here's what's going to happen. And in every case, 100%, I batted 1,000. Every single point where I said to him, this is what you're telling me is going to happen, and I'm telling you this is what's actually going to happen. I was right 100% of the time, and he was right 0% of the time. Okay, and one of the key tenets of my position on that stuff was this. I said, look, I remember talking to Valerie about it and saying, we have a hard time trusting in our leaders, right? But I have pretty good confidence in the judicial system for the simple reason that there's no bullshit. in the judicial process, really. You have to come into court with evidence. You know, there's a process that you have to satisfy in order to get the result you want in the court. So you can say whatever you want to the TV cameras, you can say whatever you want on Fox News or MSNBC, but at the end of the day, it's all just feeding this monster of information and disinformation about which people have to make a decision. What do they believe? When you get into the courtroom, all of that falls apart. And I told my friend, what's going to happen is it's all going to fall apart when they get in the courtroom, because you can't fool the judge, you can't fool the jury. You can fool the people that are watching your news source of choice, but you cannot fool the judicial system, because if you don't have the evidence to bring forth in order to lend legitimacy to your case, it'll get thrown out right away, because judges aren't stupid. They're going to look at it and go, yeah, I mean, you just made this crap up, and you're thrown out of court. And it's exactly what happened. It happened 60 times. So basically, they didn't get any traction in the courts because the evidence wasn't there. So then what was amazing about it to me is that then the conspiracy theory then was accelerated. When it didn't go their way, what they had to do was add new information on top of old information. So the new information was this: the Illuminati have gotten to the judges. All those judges are being threatened. Their families are being threatened. And so they're all buckling. They're buckling to the system. They're giving into the system because they've been threatened, and so it's really weird, because normally you would say the military industrial complex or the intelligence community is doing all this stuff. But the problem is, in most conspiracy theories over time, those guys are, well, in this conspiracy theory, they're supposed to be the good guys, not the bad guys. So it's really, really you have to do a lot of hand wringing to make it intellectually, to make it work, actually. So if you guys don't know what QAnon is and all that kind of thing, I won't recap the whole thing here. You can look it up. Just look up QAnon and say, if you don't know, just look into what is that. It's a whole belief system that is, I won't even go there. It's just so dumb that it's so beyond dumb that it's goofy, right? And every prediction that was ever made within that whole thing has not come to pass. Like it's been wrong every time. Okay. Are we reconnected? We're reconnected. Okay. So here is my point. I understand why people believe strongly one way or the other about an issue, because they have fear in their heart about a future condition for themselves and or for their country that concerns them greatly. Okay? Now, it would be my opinion that if you're smart, you would certainly want to recognize that if you have fears about a certain outcome, you should certainly suspect the source of the information that's telling you should be afraid, for the simple reason that they may be telling you to be afraid in order for you to respond in a way that benefits themselves. Okay? In other words, is it ever the case that disinformation is specifically propagated in order to control people, to get them to believe something so that they'll respond or act in a certain way that benefits the person who's telling the story? Well, the reality is that's almost always the case, actually. That's the whole purpose of propaganda. Right? So, hence, we have this situation where in our own, not just in our own lifetime, but in the last 6 months, we've seen a story unfold where literally half the people believe something that's diametrically opposed to what the other half of the people believe. We don't even know, with all the technology that we have, I mean, it would seem to me that our general populations have a high level of uncertainty about what is actually true in their world. What does that say about your religion? Think about it for a minute. Okay? You know, this is a weird thing for me to be saying because I'm a guy that's known for, that's right, Inio-san, that's exactly right. And the whole purpose of invoking fear in people is to control them. Right? Why do we have a belief, and I might be stepping on Maria's toes here because Maria, being someone of Latino descent in New York, it's possible that Maria is Catholic. Okay? So I'm just going to go out on a limb here, and I want to be careful here because my son Matthew is Catholic. I was basically an evangelical Christian most of my adult life. And I actually don't consider myself to be an evangelical Christian anymore. I certainly give some credence to many principles or ideas surrounding the Jesus guy, okay? But actually, I think that in many respects, the outflow socioculturally from Christianity as we know it, especially in America, since I'm an American, that's what I know, comes with just as much bad as good, and I don't think that it's fundamentally necessarily a great thing. There are great things about it, and sometimes it does really great things, and certain people that are in that club do really cool things. There's good there. However, I have doubts about the utility of the whole package that goes with that belief system. So, okay, you're Catholic. Okay, you're Catholic and Jewish. That's right. I forgot about that. Okay. So Maria, I say the following with an attitude of I love you, Maria. I consider you a friend, and you may disagree with what I'm about to say. Okay? So don't take it personally. I don't. If someone has an opinion very different from mine, I do not have a knee-jerk reaction to it, and I don't get angry at them or anything like that. I don't care. I think that because I think everybody's going through an odyssey of life where we're all learning all the time. We're learning new things, we're exploring new ideas, and it's a lot of fun. And we're going to make mistakes along the way, and we're going to change our mind. It's like me using Tahoma. I mean, for a while there, I was really, really big on Krita, and I'm like Mr. Krita guy, right? And now I'm not. I've kind of made a firm decision about that, actually, that, you know what, on balance, I almost kind of wish I hadn't gone down the Krita road so much. But what are you going to do? You live and learn. I mean, you know. So here's the thing about Catholicism. If we look at the formation of Christianity as we know it, if we look at Constantine's socio-political agenda, if we look at some of the dynamics of how the biblical canon was arrived at, there was a very definite socio-political agenda behind the formation of the biblical canon, and the choice of what books went into that canon served the socio-political agenda of those who were involved in forming it. Okay? And remember, we're talking about books that were... Now go back to the election. Here you have a situation where this has unfolded literally in the last few months, and we don't know what's true from one day to the next, and then we argue about it. And people feel really strongly on both sides of the argument. Okay, now let's take a book that was written literally at the least 60 years after it happened, and probably more like 100 to 150 years after it happened. Why are we going to believe that that record is accurate? The only way we're going to be sure that it's accurate is if we go back in time with magic views of it, right? As far as whether it's just good philosophy or whatever. But as a reliably historical document, it's really lacking, like in a big way. If you actually look into the methodology we use to evaluate the veracity of a historical document, the New Testament of the Bible is in really, really bad shape. It doesn't stack up very well at all. That doesn't mean it's not necessarily right or it's not a good record, but the evidence, by the same standard we would use for any other historical text, it's pretty awful. I hate to say it, but and I say that as a guy who's known as a Christian filmmaker. It's a weird thing for me to be saying, but I refuse to put my head in the sand if I'm confronted with reasonably good evidence about one thing or another. I'd rather figure out what's right. So as far as Catholicism goes, well, okay, and so let me look at Maria's comments. Right. Yeah, and anti-Semitism is a horrible thing. The problem with having a discussion. Okay, so now I'm going in a different direction entirely. The problem we have today, socio-politically and culturally, having a discussion about anti-Semitism, is that there's a very strong case to be made that there's a difference between being Jewish and being Zionist. Okay? And the socio-political agenda of Zionism is not necessarily in perfect lockstep with the socio-cultural concerns of people that are actually ethnically Jewish. The two are not always the same. And so what's happening today, and has been happening for quite a few years, is that if you criticize the political Zionist agenda, in other words, let's say you crack on Israel for beating up on Palestine, which there's some good reasons to be concerned about that. Okay, well, what happens is if you have a concern about Israel's treatment of Palestine, then you're labeled anti-Semitic, which is actually not true. If you accept that framing of your concern, then you're just buckling to a framing that's not accurate. Now, some people might be anti-Semitic, and they shouldn't be. I don't think that's a good thing at all. It's horrible. It's evil. No one should be. Well, let's go with Martin Luther King Jr. on this. We should be judged by the content of our character, right? Not by the color of our skin or our ethnicity or any of that. I literally couldn't possibly care less what a color. My son's wife is black. I mean, we're colorblind, right? That doesn't mean that somebody of one background or another doesn't merit criticism for one reason or another. But getting back to the Catholic thing. Well, that's right. It's a series of books cobbled together. The thing is, remember that the Bible that the Catholics think is precious is not even the same Bible that the Protestants think is precious, because there's books in the Catholic Bible that aren't in the Protestant Bible. So who's right? Now you can come up with some real inclusive argument that says, well, God just sort of allowed certain people to get what they needed, and he allowed them to get what they needed. I think the more important takeaway is this. If we can go through the election process that we went through, and we can literally have half the people in our country believing stuff that the other half just as fervently believes is wrong, and we literally don't know what's true, then we got to be really careful about how much magical thinking we bring to any historical document. And it all boils down to the stories we tell ourselves, because our tribe, our community, our family, we love them. We're attached to them. They mean something to us. And if we question some of the things we've been taught, then we might hurt them, or we might offend them. And so it's usually easier to just go along with the program than to ask the hard questions that often do emerge. With Catholicism, the reason I mention Catholicism is that I am pretty confident when I say that the whole idea of eternal torment, like in other words, you can die and you go to hell and you're going to burn forever, okay? That idea was not present in the first 100 years of Christianity. It was something that was added later to manipulate people. Because if they're terrified and they're can be convinced that they're going to burn forever if they don't do what you tell them to do, you know, they're kind of likely to maybe do what you tell them to do. And the Catholic Church, when people think about terrorists or human rights abuses or anything like that, the Catholic Church was the greatest offender through the Middle Ages. The things they did to people, the tortures they devised were horrendous. I mean, like, you have to really bust your ass to come up with a more horrible way to treat somebody than some of the things that the Catholic Church did. Does that mean Catholicism's wrong? No, it doesn't. It doesn't mean Catholicism's, like, as a belief system is wrong. It just means that we ought to question the agenda behind those who would have you believe a certain thing. And if you don't ask those questions, my opinion would be you're crazy, you're stupid. You're not stupid. You're weak. You're actually weak. You're afraid. You're afraid. Now, here's what happens in the real world. Okay? And I like Maria's attitude because she's obviously got a very open mind about this stuff. And she would probably be considered within our belief system a fairly liberal, Christian, right? And I certainly would too at this point in my life. Okay. Oops, I just made a mistake. Okay, so I know I kind of get all excited about this stuff in terms of my energy level because I really believe strongly that it's important. Okay, so let's put it this. Let me give you an example. Because there's a danger in America right now of conflating certain religious groups with maybe racism, let's say. Okay? And the reason for that is that in America, evangelical Christianity is falsely conflated with political republicanism. So in other words, if you're a white evangelical Christian, the chances are, not 100% by any means, but the chances are you voted for Trump. The chances are you're a Republican. Okay? Nothing wrong with that. There's two political parties. Pick one. It's all good. Okay? The problem is that when the political is conflated with the religion, then you can be sure, and I know this to be true because I lived it and I was in it, okay? What happens is there is pressure, unspoken pressure in your group not to question the political agenda because of the fact that you're in the religious club. Okay? So what does that look like? In practice, what it means is the reason you're a Republican is if you look at some of the long-term consequences of some regulatory, economic, and political trends over the last 50 years that basically favored the Republican agenda more than the progressive or democratic or liberal agenda. There might be things in that soup of policies that you have a problem with, actually. But you won't speak up about that because you're pro-life. And I literally know people that are like this. They're Republican. The only reason they're Republican is the Republicans managed to get the monopoly on the pro-life position. And so if you're a Christian, you're going to be pro-life, and therefore you have to be a Republican. That is so ridiculous, actually, in terms of locking yourself into that. Now, it's not ridiculous in the sense that you can only vote one way or the other, so you do have to pick, right? But there's an incredible conflation of white evangelical Christianity and Republican politics in the United States of America. And I think for the most part it's a false conflation, because I think that a lot of Christians, and some have spoken up about it recently, I think of Phil Vischer, who was the creator of Veggie Tales, the kids cartoon, the Christian cartoon thing. He's had some really good videos here on YouTube talking about a more balanced view, especially about the racial issue. Because there were some things that happened like in the 60s, in 50s and 60s, when white people were moving to the suburbs. I mean, the short story is this. There were legal barriers put in place specifically to prevent black people from getting loans and being able to move out to the suburbs at the same time that the white people were moving out to the suburbs. And it's very clear that the reason for that was to keep the black people from moving to the suburbs. And there's been a 50-year outflow of that in terms of the racial makeup of our cities, you know, and it's not even it'd be really hard to dispute the evidence about that, right? And at the time that those laws were put into place, nobody made a secret about it. It wasn't. It would be really politically incorrect to endorse those types of laws today, but back then it wasn't. You know, what'd you say, babe? Yeah, both sides did it because it was the Southern Democrats, right, that were kind of leading that charge. So the tenor of the two parties has changed actually over the last 50 years too, right? So okay, so Maria says similarly, priests could marry up until about the 10th century. The rule was changed because the church was concerned about the division of property among the children of priests. I absolutely would be willing to bet $100 right now that you are 100% correct in stating that. I'll bet you're completely right. And so for me, this is my perspective. If you ever see a situation where you're being fed a story and it can be shown in hindsight that the reason you were fed that story was to service someone else's political agenda, and I do believe that has been the case here in the United States for the last 6 months. If that ever happens, or worse, if you can see historically that it often happens, then why would you believe that it ever doesn't happen? Okay? Which means that anytime you have an ism or a religion or some movement spring up out of nowhere throughout history, you should look at that situation and ask yourself who benefited from the common people buying into this belief system. Because invariably what you find out is somebody benefited a lot. And so at that point, does that mean that the belief system's wrong? No. You can't prove the belief system was wrong. But what you can say is that it is suspect. At best, it's suspect. And so, you know, for me, if you're not willing to ask those questions, then you're being naive, or more likely, you're probably being a people pleaser, which is what I've been a lot of my life. I'm not anymore, thankfully. But in other words, you're not being true to yourself and the questions you might want to ask because you're afraid of whose cage you're going to rattle, you know, or who you're going to offend, or who might, you know, where you might not fit in anymore, right? If you ask some honest questions that you have. I refuse to do that. I won't do it anymore. I'm gonna ask the questions, and I'm gonna be honest with myself about the data that I'm able to uncover. And you know, based on that data, there's a lot of really, really fair questions that need to be asked about the development of Christianity as we know it today. And remember, there's a zillion different denominations, and all of them think that their way is right. And I think the important takeaway is that that's always been true. You know, so if you're part of the new movement, whatever it might be, they usually have some kind of label. But if you're part of the movement and you're convinced that your group, you know what, after 2,000 years, we finally got it right. Everybody else for 2,000 years hasn't quite gotten it right, but now we're the ones who have. We're the ones that finally figured it out. It's comically ridiculous. I mean, really? No. You haven't figured it out. What normally happened is what happened to me when I was in college, which is basically, I don't know who I am. I haven't figured it out yet. I don't quite fit in. I don't know how to relate to people. I don't, you know, click with girls. You know, I'm not, you know, I'm just feeling out of place. You know, I don't know who I am or whatever, right? So, okay, that's perfectly natural. Well, what happens is when people are in that vulnerable place, and then someone comes along and is nice to them or makes them feel accepted and welcome, what happens is you make a very quick and and plus we have a really strong proclivity to cling hard to whatever was the first thing we learned in terms of it's just something I've observed in life is we have a tendency to cling to whatever's the first thing you learn in any area or discipline or whatever. You tend to cling pretty strongly to it, and it takes a lot of evidence to get you to question if the initial thing, especially if it served you emotionally. So we become connected to a tribe. And actually, so like if you go to an evangelical church, some of you guys have never been to an evangelical church probably. But if you go to an evangelical church, within that community, there's this fight to challenge the political climate. And so, by definition, most people in that community are quite specifically not growing. They tell themselves they're growing, and within the community, that's what they tell themselves. You know, hey, we're going to have a Bible study because we really want to grow, right? And the reality is that what really usually happens is once you reach an emotional equilibrium where you genuinely feel part of that tribe, the safest thing for you to do is actually to stop growing. Stop asking questions and just enjoy the fact that you're part of that community. And that's fine. You can go through a whole lifetime that way and actually have a really good life in that community. So, you know, there's some benefit to it for sure. Okay, so I want to look at Maria's comments because she's kind of weighing in here. The most important history lesson considered 2 words as our prof sent us is question everything, right? Okay, so I guess there's nothing new on the comments. No, the whole thing about priests not being able to marry, I don't know. I don't even know much about that, but of course that's a way to control them. And of course you're going to get a certain amount of, you know, deviant behavior. I mean, obviously people like to pick on priests because of pedophilia. I'm not saying all priests are pedophiles. In fact, of course they're not. But when you look, the reality is everybody likes sex, okay? Some people are gay, some people are straight, but basically sex is a part of life. I made the calculated decision to be very, very open with my son about that topic as he entered into that age of life and stuff, and I don't regret it a bit. It was absolutely the right choice to just be real matter of fact about it and not try to, you know, so there was no. It wasn't like masturbation. I mean, obviously that's the hidden topic, right? The reality is everybody does it, like statistically 100%. The truth is today in our culture, pornography is actually 100%. It's basically 100%. It's not totally 100%, but it's pretty much 100%. Everybody looks at it. I mean, the reality is of course people want sex, enjoy sex. It's sex. People like it. Okay, so why is that taboo? You know, the Christian community has turned that into an absolute way to control young people by creating a morality around it. And the actual result is that out of wedlock pregnancies and all the things that they're not necessarily always bad, but they're hard to deal with because you have to deal with them, are actually way higher among kids that grow up in evangelical Christian families. There's something about the taboo that I guess makes people want to go out and experiment more. Whereas when they're just, oops, I should just erase that. Whereas when they're just, you know, they're told, look, this is the way I would, like, a good example would be this. I'd say, look, here's the deal. You know, pregnancy is a thing. So if you, well, actually, I should say this. The important thing that I wanted to convey to my kid, I have 3 kids, but I'm thinking of my youngest one, was this. I want you to understand that when you go down that road, meaning sex, you are it's a big deal. It's going to affect you. It's going to, you're kind of connected to that person in a way that you just can't really put that toothpaste back in the tube, so to speak, to use a really tacky metaphor. So just really be sober-minded about what you're getting into, and really be sure that you're ready for that. And I think that's probably a pretty good way to approach it. And when in other words, you're not being shamed. That's the key. You're not being shamed about it. Because anybody who tries to, it's just silly, the things that people are in denial about sometimes. It's just goofy. So let's just go even a step further here in the way this kind of rattles around in my brain. The question then becomes this: what's the big problem with telling the truth, right? What's the problem with just telling the truth? Now, there are topics about which we have different opinions, and we may differ about, in some cases, what the truth is. But the takeaway for me is the fact that there are certain topics where we are really afraid to just speak openly about either the topic or how we feel about that topic, right? Well, why would you want to live that way? Why do you want to live in fear? Usually I submit, you guys can disagree, but usually I would submit the reason you want to live in fear is because it's more comfortable than the alternative, which is that you kind of really make some people around you uncomfortable if you talk about certain things, right? And that is true. And the reality is you're probably not going to change them either. So this is very much your own odyssey. This is your, thing to sort of puzzle out and wrestle with. So at the end of the day, I would rather just be able to clinically explore ideas and invariably, I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to be wrong about some things. It's going to turn out that I had bad information, maybe. Okay, Maria got some. Okay, hey. Art Goku. Facts. Can you expand on that a little bit? Facts. I'm not sure what you're saying there. Art Goku. Another thing, I haven't really been out of the country, okay, to be honest. I haven't traveled a lot. I've traveled a lot within the United States, but I've never traveled out of the United States other than Windsor, but, I mean, that doesn't count, right? I think it's probably true that people are... I'm reacting to something that's probably... at least in Western cultures, probably more a USA thing. Like, I think people are more open-minded, and I would guess people in Europe wonder what the hell we're so uptight about. I could be wrong about that, but I suspect that's the case. If Darren's around, he may have an opinion about that too. What you can do is try to find out what's true to you and work toward that. Well, that's right. Here's the thing. If you're not married to the idea, the ego of, well, I've got all the answers, right? I'm Mr., I've got the answers, right? If you're not married to the ego and the insecurity of needing to be right, then you're unafraid, and therefore you can actually connect with somebody. You and I, Maria, can actually have a conversation, and it's no big deal. And we don't have to agree. Getting back to the political thing, I don't have to agree with my friend, Mark. But I still love my friend. I mean, I think of him like a brother. But politically, at this point in history, we have very different opinions about both what's true quite literally what's actually happened in the United States, and then how we feel about what's happened. So I'm living proof that you can be strongly opposed to someone in your, say, politics or your religion or whatever, and it just doesn't. One of my very best friends is, a Hindu from India, and I love her dearly, I love her ideas, and we have great conversations, In fact, I need to give Gita a call, come to think of it. I haven't talked to her in a while. Maybe she's tuning into my YouTube channel. We're opposite ends of the pole, but we love each other and love many of the same things. Right. That's cool. Yeah, with your own sister, that's great. Well, what happens, I think, in the religious sphere is that, if someone's genuinely, truly believes that if you don't believe what they believe, that you're going to, like suffer for all eternity, then they get pretty hung up on changing your mind, That's understandable. I guess that's the takeaway. It's understandable. It often comes from a good place, right? So therefore, instead of beating them up for, because we think they're wrong, we can at least appreciate where they're coming from, that it comes from a good place, right? Boink, boink. I'm being pretty loosey-goosey here with the eyebrows. What time is it? 7:09? Holy smokes. I did not realize it had gotten that late. Holy cow. I'm having too much fun here today. Yakking. I am one yakking fool. I'm going to zoom in here and actually turn my smoothing up so I can really dial in this shape. Really dial in this shape. Hopefully when I zoom out, yeah, that's probably okay. It's a little bit asymmetrical, but kind of in a good way, I guess. I'm going to actually lower that just a bit. And now I got to go, big curve. And, I probably have a stronger opinion / reaction to a lot of these topics because I did spend many, many years in a subculture that I just don't quite buy into it anymore. I think there's a lot of great things there, but I don't want to be part of it myself anymore. I just don't. So that's kind of a weird thing to say, probably. Actually, you know what? We might have a problem here. I gotta check Mel's costuming. Yeah, I've got this wrong. This is wrong. Sorry about that, guys. Hello, Vegas. Wake up. Wake up, Vegas. I'm waiting for Vegas to wake up. There it is. Yeah, I blew this. Sorry, guys. I got ahead of myself. I was just having a little too much fun. I mean, we got... On another topic, I've been using your known to unknown method for practicing hands and hand movement, and there's been some improvement. Hey, that's cool. That's cool. I'm glad it's helped you. I apply it to all kinds of things, actually. But obviously it has application in all kinds of things that are creative. Any kind of problem solving. Engineering. You have to start with what you know, and then that reveals. That's why when my son was getting his business going, I really encouraged him that you don't have to have the answers. It's like ready, fire, aim, because you literally have no way of knowing what the questions are going to be until you get into it and discover what's starting to go wrong. So it's better to just dive in and let the problems emerge, and then you begin to figure out how to solve them. Sometimes the best way to solve them is to dismiss them and not deal with them. Just choose to ignore them, actually. It depends. But otherwise you get caught in both the indecision of feeling like you have to have it all figured out before you move forward, even further complicated by the fact for some people that it actually paralyzes them. You know, they're worried about what other people are going to think when they fail, I guess. And so because of that, they want to have all the answers. And to be, true disclosure here, I used to be that guy. I used to totally be the guy that really needed to have all the answers. I mean, I was the quintessential people pleaser. When I first met Valerie, I said to her, hey, what's my flaw? What's my flaw? She didn't bat an eye, and she hadn't even known me that long. She said people pleaser. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? What are you talking about? People pleaser? Me? No. No, she was spot on correct. Spot on correctamundo. She could see it as plain as day. We'll get into that another time about what that even means, because some people might be going, oh, people pleaser. What does that even mean? Yeah, I screwed up his garment here. Oop, there's a comment. Comment on the chat. What is it? That's how we started our former theater group. Oh, okay. We jumped in and started dog paddling. Oh, the problems we found I had to figure out, and you're still working on it. Yeah, that's good. I think that's probably more often than not that's the way to proceed. Whatever it is that you want to do, it's probably better to just dive in and see what goes wrong, because you don't know what you don't know. I've certainly seen that to be true with animation. Whoops, that's not what I meant to do. Sorry. That's why I said if I had it to do over again, I'm very sure I would not have gone down the road of trying to do so much animation Krita. Ed today I was out there, and obviously he's proving, and I did too, to a degree, that you can do animation with Krita. It's great. But I kind of feel like I've just learned the same lessons over and over enough times to where it's like, okay, I don't need to go back and relearn that again. And I'm a little slow that way. I'm not gonna lie to you. I always said I'm smart, but I'm not quick. I've told clients that. It's like, the client wants, how are we going to do this or that or the other? And I'll tell them, listen, let me chew on this for a couple days. I want to just gel on this because I'm smart, but I'm not quick. I need to think about it. Think about what the plan is, Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so boom, 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 boom. Got to get this hair back there. We'll put in this little indication. And there we go. Okay, so now let's zip back and see what we have. Oh, I didn't stretch this down. I like it. I actually like this. Okay. Hey, Inyo-san. Thanks. Thanks for hanging out. Yep. I like our little group. Same people seem to show up on on Darren's live streams too. No, it's cool. It's cool. We've got a tribe. One thing I'm thinking here is going back here. I'm kind of feeling like I don't like this line. This is a little bit too high. Methinks. So yeah, man, how did we get from UFOs to politics and religion and all the rest? I think it's a lot of fun, actually. I've thought many times actually about creating a YouTube channel and call it Alt Center. I'm the Alt Center because I feel strongly that the correct answer to difficult policy issues is usually right in the middle. It's in the boring center where basically nobody's ever satisfied with the policy or the decision. Because real policymaking is nuanced. And you never get that when you're watching the talking heads on, on television. Because they've only got 40 seconds to cover what they're ever going to cover. So every sentence begins with look. So what do you think about this? Well, look. Boom. And then they go into their diatribe. Everybody starts with the word look. It's like the universal diatribe preparer word nowadays. Save all. Okay, so now what I gotta do is I need to pull in some color information here. I'm actually running out of gas. I've been going for an hour and a half. Of course, I think I went for 2.5 hours this morning. So, I am gonna go to the drawings. I believe I want to be in the drawings folder. I want to look in here, see if I can find a TLV level of Mel that I can just drag in and then steal the palette from there. Unfortunately, okay, there we go. Finally, it caught up. Where are you, Mel? Where are you? There you are. That one? Probably. Yeah. Let's load that. Absolutely. That's exactly what we want. Boom. In fact, you almost could use that. I could have used that pose in this very scene. Wow, that's kind of weird. Look at that. Isn't that weird? I feel like a silly goose. I could have reused this stuff. Alright, that's alright. We'll grab all these colors, come over here, and just paste them in. Okay, now we can turn that off. Sometimes I'm just silly enough to realize how silly I am. Okay, so now we're going to go boom, boom. Alright, before I go any further, I want to make sure I close these shapes. Close them, close them, close them. And I'm going to actually turn this red so I can see what I'm doing. Boom. Yep. So what I do is I turn the color red so that I can see it and make sure my shapes are closed. And then I'll switch it back to the whites of the eyes color here in a little bit. Makes sense, people? It makes perfect sense. Do you remember the section of the news program called Point and Counterpoint? Yeah, from SNL. Yeah. Jane, you ignorant slut. Yep, that was Dan Aykroyd's line. I watched that. I remember when I was probably 10 years old, 12, something like that. Probably about 12 years old, being at my grandma's house. And I remember seeing Point and Counterpoint on SNL. This would have been around 1976, probably. Crazy how old we are. It's all good. We're aged. We like being aged. It's fun. Uh-oh, we got a problem. Yep, gotta smack that shut. Make sure that's closed. Boom. Boom. Okay. So now we should be able to fill. Ah, darn it. Another leak. Jeesh. Jeesh. Leaks. Leaks are for chumps. Chumps leak. I don't leak. I'll not leak ever again. Unless I do. Let's see here. Yeah. Okay. That really is going to have to be lassoed. Oh, come on. Come on. As my good friend Donnie O used to say back when he was alive. Come on. Leaks, leaks, and more leaks. Feel that? It was a legit news section. I remember Victor Rizzo, who always called him. This is Victor Rizzo. I'm sorry, Maria. The answer is no. I don't know anything about that. I thought that was an SNL thing. Wow. Sorry to sit here and blab on and on about it, not even looking at your message and realizing that I'm talking out the wrong end. I feel like a silly goose. A very, very, very silly goose now. How silly Can you be about as silly as Dave? Okay, now what we'll do is we'll take this and turn it back into the whites of his eyes, and boop. Are we going to get a leak? Nope. Good. Good, 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 good. Boop. No leaks. I don't remember which side you take, but I love using Sentinels now. SNL was probably a riff on the real thing. Oh, I bet it was. Yeah, I didn't know that. I thought that was something that, it was Dan Aykroyd and Jane Curtin, doing the banter, the banter back and forth. Tell you what we'll do is let's hit the fill tool and put it in freehand mode so we can go through and fixie a few things. This should probably be the whites of the eyes color, I would say. And then what I wanted to do was just go through and if you use the fill tool in freehand mode, you can pick up all these little mistakes. Like down here in the corners where the fill tool didn't get in there. Just draw a lasso around it. And then this is a good situation where you want to use it as well on the eyes where he's squinting. There we go. So we're just, yeah, I wish I didn't have to do it, but you got to do it. There's a little flesh tone area that's missing. Probably this should be that. Okay. And now we've got a little hair situation right there we need to catch. Uh-oh. That did not fill, apparently. I bet you it's going to leak. Yep. Do-do-do-do-do-do. Okay, so we go B. Yeah, I don't remember point and counterpoint pre-SNL. Not silly at all. Early SNL was a great satire. Use that freehand a lot. I like the roughness of pencil sketching in my animations. Yeah, and I was actually, I really was clinging to that aesthetic for a long time on this project, and more recently have kind of abandoned it to a degree where I'm preferring sharper outlines. It's all opinion at the end of the day. It's not a big deal one way or the other, but I just seem to like the results better typically when I make the lines a little crisper. Okay, speaking of crisper, actually, let's see, delete. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and smack in a vector level right now just to deal with the shadows. I'm rather enamored of vector levels for shadows. They're just so doggone easy. They really are. So yeah, I've spent so much time studying price action in markets for the last, well, basically a technical approach to stock trading. I've spent so much time on that in the last couple of weeks that I'm a little bit kind of fried, actually. And today I was like, you know what, I'm going to definitely make today a sort of a chill day. Just kind of work on my cartoon, get back in the groove. Scene settings. We need to change this to enable the column filter, blah, blah, blah. This can actually be extended down to there. And now we'll just smack in those shadows. We love it. It's so easy. Easy peasy. Alright, anything else? I'm sure you had to abandon the roughness for professional efficiency. Well, no, it wasn't that. I just was too sloppy. I mean, I just think I was just too sloppy. And when I went back to the plain old like the standard brush you know, not the My Paint brushes, but just a standard brush for inking, you know, I'm like going back and looking at my scenes, and it's like they really look better. You know, they look crisper, they look more professional, if you will. That's a kind of a loaded term, but yeah, I'm just like, you know what? All I care about is what looks right. If it looks good, it is good, and I just felt like things were looking better when I had the crisp lines that you see here, you know. So it's like, okay, this whole obsession with having sort of the look of scanned pencil art, I quit. I quit being obsessed with that. I think I was too fixated on that aesthetic for a while there. You know, and it's all good. There's plenty of shots in the show that still kind of have that look, and it looks fine. But I just think I've improved. I think it looks better now. So let's just keep going with what looks better. Now, some people might disagree. You know, it is possible. People manage to disagree about all sorts of things. Why wouldn't they disagree about that? One wonders. That was not quite what I wanted to do. That wasn't either. By gum and by golly. I need to put a little bit of a shadow under his chin. Okay, not bad. Do 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 do. All right, so here we go. Okay, so this is slightly flawed. I mean, pretty clearly actually. I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna be bold here. I'm just gonna chuck that. Get it out of there. Okay. Let's turn the sketch back on. Yeah, I don't know what I was thinking there. Well, like I said, I've been known to make plenty of stupid mistakes. So, first of all, let's get that in there. So I'm trying to just kind of feel. This is harder than it should be. I'm not really sure why it's so hard. It could be one of those, I hate to blame everything on dyslexia, but it could be a dyslexia kind of thing where I just can't reverse it in my mind and see it. I guess doing this would be helpful. And it is. That's improved. That's definitely improved. Okay, so boom. Uh-oh. And now we have a problem. So now what I got to do is you hit the S key and just grab this whole section like that, Control C, and then go into this frame. Yeah, boy, that looks so much better. I don't even know what I was thinking. S key, Control V, and there we go. Much, much better. Not necessarily definitively perfect, but certainly improved. So another reason why I like Tahoma is it's just so easy to go back and fix things later. And when you suck as bad as I do, you got to go back and fix things later on. I'm sure you'd admit, okay, yeah, so there's nothing new on the messages there. Okay, I like it. I like this shot. I like what I'm seeing here. I do. Okay, so let's go insert. And I'm actually going to... I am going to do another vector level. Just because I've been certainly more liberal with vector levels in recent history. And they are quite useful for some things. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just draw a shape like so. Okay, and now we're going to put a base local color here, which is going to be essentially the sky blue-ish, something like that. Yep, that'll work. Okay, and then I'm going to kind of do the same thing I did the other day where I'm going to take a really, really transparent white. Then it's not a problem to have this banding in there. Okay? So now what I'm going to do is I'm also going to add let's say add a full-blown white shape here, cloud kind of thing. And by the way, as you guys can see, with vector levels, you actually get an infinite canvas, which is kind of useful. All right, so now what I'm going to do is just dial this down until it looks kind of sort of okay. Okay, and then I'm going to double it up like so. And then in my post-production step, I'm going to go ahead and blur it a little bit. So we're going to have a defocused background. Right, so this is column 1. So we'll just add a blur. Very simple. Bloop, 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 bloop. And then we'll take the blur and set it at about 10 pixels. So all we're doing is creating a defocused background. And when we look at this in render mode, ta-da, looks fine. Now you could argue that the banding, if you wanted to really blur out the banding so it looked like an airbrush thing, then of course your clouds are going to be more muted or whatever. I would say that's probably an improvement in this case. So now what we can do is get rid of this column entirely. There's no reason for it to be in there. And so once again, I'm going to go into my cast, scene cast, and hit remove unused levels. It just kind of keeps things clean. File, save all. All right, so that's pretty much it. I'm going to render this. Actually, I need to change my render settings. This is going to be shot number 549. And it looks like we're all ready to go. So 26 frames. All right, we'll go with it. So that's going to render. Badoom. And then we'll switch back over to here. And insert this into the show. Now we're having to wait for Vegas again to kind of wakey Vegas. Come on, Vegas. Why do you have to like think so much every single time I click on you, dude? Alright, scene number 549. There it is. And we want to open that sequence at a wonderful 8 frames per second. And here it is right there. Boom. We're going to drag this in here. Change our properties to disable resampling. This can be deleted from the storyboard. And just for completeness, I'm going to clean the project media. And so now we have, I guess we can go back here so we can look at it on the big screen. So there she goes. Grabs the sword. Here. He sees that. And then he goes, I like it. I like it, people. I like it. And then what we're going to see is we'll see this little landscape situation, then he'll just blow through and scurry up it. So that's it. I think we're done, people. We're done for tonight. Now if we look at this at full resolution, you can see it's quite a bit sharper. There is one thing we need to change actually, is the outline colors are wrong. Excuse me, right now they're black and they really shouldn't be black. They should be something more like that. Yep, something more like that. Alright, so I'm going to hit Control-Shift-R. See how fast that rendered? That was really quick. Now if we look at this at full resolution, boom. Yeah, I like it. I think it came out nice. So what am I liking about this? I tell you what, I want to be doing more of this. The way I did actually hand-drawn animation and just kind of smack it in there, because you could come back with the plastic tool and do like a little cock of his head. That would be fine. But as far as the sort of the life and the storytelling and the snap of it, I think just drawing one frame at a time like I did here today, I think is definitely, it just feels good. You know, it's fun to watch. So not bad. Not bad. I'm pretty satisfied with that. So with that, I am going to sign off. And thanks, Maria. You're always a wonderful breath of fresh air. One of these days, maybe we'll meet. I'll tell you what, actually, in all seriousness, if I ever get around to getting out to New York City to visit my son, Matthew, and his wife, Aileen, in the Manhattan area, I would definitely have to see if you and I can get, do lunch. That'd be fun. That'd be a lot of fun. Super cool. All right, so with that, I'm signing off, and I will, as you guys know, actually, I said that wrong. Let me try it again. There will be